Max Verstappen responds to getting punished for VSC incident. McLaren is back in the spotlight, and the F1 boss speaks about the delayed quali session. Do consider subscribing. Let's get into the latest F1 news. Lando Norris says he cannot be proud of his win in the Brazilian Grand Prix sprint race after he was handed it on a plate by his McLaren teammate Oscar Piastri. Piastri, who had taken pole, looked in command and nailed on to take a routine win in Sao Paulo. However, in a reversal of the team instructions earlier in the season at the Hungarian Grand Prix, McLaren asked Piastri to swap positions with Norris to boost the latter's chances in the Drivers' Championship. The order came with just a few laps remaining amid the looming threat of a safety car to recover Nico Hülkenberg's stricken Haas, with Piastri pulling over to allow Norris to take the checkered flag. Norris' win cuts Max Verstappen's lead in the championship to 45 points, while Piastri was second to claim a McLaren 1-2. "We're fighting for a constructor's title, and we're fighting for our drivers' championships," said Norris. "We want to help the whole team achieve both of these goals." Obviously, from a driver's point of view, it puts us in a slightly different position. "I'm not proud to win a race like I did today. It's not how I want to. I'm not proud of it, basically. So I will work hard to go and do a better job in qualifying later and put myself in a better position for the race. We want to avoid it as much as we can, but at the same time, we sign up for this. We have to work together as a team. We get told what to do. We have a boss, and we do the best we can to help each other out." Piastri delayed the chance to switch positions for as long as possible as he reluctantly obeyed the team orders, now known as papaya rules, after the controversial switch at the Hungaroring. The 23-year-old was quizzed about giving up a victory and added, "It's not as fun as winning, but I know the position that we're in. We've been talking about this for months now, and this is really the first time that we've had to enforce it, team orders. So, yes, I would have preferred to have won, but again, it's a sprint race, it's the same points for the team. And being realistic, I don't have much to fight for in the driver's standing, so we knew this is something that could and probably would happen at some point. But yeah, I was fine with it." Norris was asked about the time it took for Piastri to swap places and said he understood why the Aussie left it so long to do so. He added, "We spoke through many different scenarios. It was tough to do it much earlier because the guys behind were pretty close. I think there was one lap, but it's always hard to suddenly plan that and execute it well. We did the best job we could. We want both cars up there, and of course the safety car put out a little bit of threat. There's always those risks, so we planned for it and we secured it." Max Verstappen has been hit with a retrospective 5-second penalty for the Brazilian Grand Prix sprint race after an FIA investigation into a virtual safety car breach. The penalty drops the Red Bull man from 3rd to 4th in the final classification, losing him a further point to McLaren driver and F1 2024 title rival Lando Norris. Red Bull star Verstappen finished 3rd on track in the sprint race at Interlagos as Norris took victory with the help of McLaren team orders. The sprint was put under virtual safety car in the closing laps at Sao Paulo after Nico Hülkenberg's Haas came to a halt at the side of the track, carrying a suspected exhaust issue. As the race was preparing to resume, Verstappen momentarily pulled alongside Norris's teammate Oscar Piastri on the approach to Turn 4, one of the key overtaking spots on the Brazilian GP, before backing out of a potential move as the pair reached the corner. Television replays showed trackside panels denoting a virtual safety car period as Verstappen and Piastri reached Turn 4, with the race officially resuming seconds later. The incident occurred while the race was still under VSC conditions, with an investigation launched over whether Verstappen's action broke the VSC rules. Under VSC, drivers are required to drive to a so-called delta time to prevent competitors from gaining an unfair advantage while the race is neutralized. The FIA have confirmed that Verstappen has been handed a retrospective 5-second penalty, dropping him to 4th behind Ferrari driver Charles Leclerc. It means Verstappen's lead over Norris in the World Championship has been reduced to 44 points ahead of tomorrow's main race in Brazil. Verstappen has also been hit with 1 penalty point, putting him on 7 accrued over the last 12 months. Drivers face a 1-race ban if they collect 12 penalty points over a 12-month period. The FIA's verdict read, "The stewards heard from the driver of Car 1, Max Verstappen, team representative and reviewed positioning marshalling system data, timing, telemetry evidence. Article 56.5 states in part, all cars must also be above this minimum time when the FIA light panels change to green. The driver was 0.63 seconds below the minimum time at VSC end when the FIA light panels changed to green. This indicates a sporting advantage gained under VSC. The driver explained that as he was awaiting VSC to end and he got the notification that he was below the minimum time, he attempted to correct the error but failed to do so by the point that the panels turned green. This is a breach and the standard penalty is applied for the advantage gained at that time. The net effect of this put the driver ahead of where he was at the start of the VSC and not as a result of the car in front falling back. Verstappen's latest penalty from the FIA comes after the three-time world champion was hit with a rare 20-second time penalty during last weekend's Mexican Grand Prix. It came after Verstappen was involved in two separate incidents with Norris, with the Dutchman handed two 10-second penalties. The incident reopened the debate over driving standards in F1, with Verstappen's conduct in wheel-to-wheel situations coming under scrutiny from a number of pundits and F1 insiders, including former F1 driver Johnny Herbert, who was on the stewards panel in Mexico. Speaking in an independent capacity earlier this week, Mr. Herbert criticized Verstappen's horrible mindset in battle and described his acts against Norris as an absolute no-no. Mr. Herbert is also present on the four-man stewards panel in Brazil this weekend. Formula One's latest technical controversy has erupted at the Brazilian Grand Prix amid suspicions that some teams have allegedly used water to cool their tires from the inside. With the fight for the championship between Red Bull and McLaren getting closer, there has been an increased probing between the two squads over elements of their cars. McLaren came under fire for its Mini DRS rear wing, which the team had to alter in the wake of complaints about the concept being outside the rules. Then more recently, there was a row over Red Bull having a front bib adjuster inside its car that some of its rivals suspected could have been used to adjust ride height during parc ferme conditions. Both matters brought intervention from the FIA, but neither squad was found to have done anything illegal. Now, however, Autosport has learned that attention has shifted to a trick that Red Bull suspects has been used by several of its rivals, believed to include McLaren, to help cool tires during races. The theory is that some teams have found a way to inject water, or another unspecified liquid, into the tires through the valves shortly before tires are fitted to the cars in the race. Having such a coolant inside the tire could help keep the bulk of the tire cool to help limit thermal degradation and ultimately help deliver better race pace. It is understood that concern about the activity erupted after the Singapore Grand Prix, when sources suggest some rims of teams were spotted with liquid inside them, something that is unusual. That is because teams normally make an extra effort to try to remove all moisture from inside a tire, as that helps to ensure teams can hit perfect peak tire pressure. F1's technical regulations make a point of trying to limit the amount of moisture that teams can remove rather than add. Article 10.8.4 states that tires may only be inflated with air or nitrogen, and any process the intent of which is to reduce the amount of moisture in the tire and or in its inflation gas is forbidden. Autosport has learned that the FIA has been alerted to the concerns about the activity, and its head of single-seater matters Nicolas Tombazis has been in dialogue with Pirelli and teams at the Brazilian GP to discuss the matter. Furthermore, it is understood that Tombazis kept a close eye over the removal of the tires from their rims after the sprint race in Brazil to see if there was any evidence of unusual liquid there. Although there has been no official comments from the FIA over the matter, it is understood that there is skepticism about whether or not teams would be trying to exploit matters in this area. The FIA scrutineering report from the sprint race also confirmed that tires were inspected and given the all clear. It said, "The tires used by all drivers during the sprint today have been checked." It is understood that the idea of adding moisture to tires has been outlawed for many years through a technical directive that the FIA issued previously, so anyone found to have been adding liquid in this manner could risk being reported to the stewards. The race pace mystery? Red Bull has been hunting for answers as to why its race pace advantage over rivals disappeared this season, especially at the Miami GP, where a number of other squads made a leap that could not be explained through upgrades. Max Verstappen said ahead of the Brazilian GP that the long runs of rival teams are hard to fathom. Some teams made huge steps on race pace, which is quite odd, he explained. Because if you look at our car compared to last year, we made steps in qualifying and in the race. The others also make a decent step in qualifying pace, but then they make a much, much bigger step in race pace. And that's something that's hard for us to understand. Team principal Christian Horner told Autosport recently about the swing of form in Miami. If one was a skeptic and somewhat paranoid, you say something's changed. Because even when we've gone back to the configuration of the car that, for example, we had in China, we still have some of the same issues that we have experienced. But in saying that, it changed for everybody, potentially. But I've never in a season seen a swing so exaggerated. Obviously, we have to get on top of that. We have to understand it. Qualifying for the highly anticipated Brazilian Grand Prix has been officially postponed due to severe rain that struck the Interlagos circuit on Saturday afternoon. This sudden downpour created challenging conditions that affected both the track and the surrounding paddock areas in Sao Paulo. Initially, the qualifying session was delayed because of intense thundery showers. However, as conditions continued to worsen and safety became a significant concern, the FIA made the decision to postpone the session entirely. They are now planning to reschedule it for a later time, although the exact timing has yet to be confirmed. On Saturday, the sprint event was successfully held in dry conditions, but shortly after that, the weather conditions took a turn for the worse, leading to the postponement of qualifying. At first, the qualifying session was merely delayed by an hour, as officials hoped for improved conditions. Unfortunately, despite waiting, the weather did not clear up enough to ensure that the drivers could participate in qualifying safely. The visibility was severely impacted, and there was also a significant amount of standing water on various parts of the circuit, which made it unsafe for any track action. With daylight fading and the conditions remaining unsuitable, the FIA officially confirmed that the qualifying session would be postponed. It is important to note that this does not mean the session is cancelled. There is still the possibility to hold qualifying on Sunday morning before the main race, but official plans regarding timing are still to be determined. In a statement, the FIA clarified the situation by saying, "The qualifying for the São Paulo Grand Prix is postponed." The governing body further explained their reasoning behind the decision, stating that, "The decision was taken due to the lack of visibility caused by the level of rain we have experienced in the past few hours. There is a lot of standing water on parts of the circuit, which renders conditions unsafe." They also emphasized the importance of safety, saying, "As much as we would all like to see competition on track, the safety of drivers, team members, volunteers, officials, and spectators is our main priority." The FIA added that they would decide on a start time for the qualifying session on Sunday morning as soon as possible. Ferrari's team principal Fred Vasseur shared his concerns about the weather conditions during a conversation with Sky Italy. He mentioned, "I think that we have to wake up quite early tomorrow morning for the quali. It's heavy rain, and I don't know about the tarmac and if it's raining properly, but we already have some lakes in some corners. It will be difficult." His comments highlight the challenges the teams face due to the poor weather. Earlier on Saturday during the sprint race, Lando Norris achieved victory, finishing ahead of his McLaren teammate Oscar Piastri. Meanwhile, Max Verstappen, who is leading the World Championship, faced a setback when he received a 5-second penalty for accelerating too quickly under virtual safety car conditions just before the restart on the final lap, which caused him to drop to 4th place. Once qualifying is rescheduled and takes place, it is worth noting that Verstappen will have a 5-place grid penalty to contend with, as he has taken a new power unit that exceeds his allocated amount for the season at Interlagos. This added complexity will certainly make for an interesting race day. Red Bull V-Carb driver Liam Lawson expressed that he truly does not even have the words to describe what he just witnessed after once again battling with Sergio Perez during the sprint race at the Brazilian Grand Prix. The tension and rivalry between Lawson and Perez escalated significantly during this race, especially after their controversial encounters in Mexico earlier this season. During the Mexican Grand Prix, Lawson and Perez had several close encounters, culminating in Lawson giving Perez the middle finger, which clearly indicated disagreement between the two drivers. This past weekend in Sao Paulo, their intense rivalry continued as Perez advanced through the field after starting in the 13th position and eventually came up against Lawson, who was holding on to the 8th position, a spot that earned points. Desperate to move ahead in the race, Perez attempted to make an aggressive move on Lawson as they approached turn 1. However, he ended up locking up his brakes, which allowed Lawson a chance to regain his position. Despite this setback, Perez managed to pass Lawson again shortly thereafter. Toward the end of the race, a virtual safety car, or VSC, was deployed, which provided Perez with additional protection from being overtaken again by Lawson, who was keen to reclaim his position. As the race concluded and the VSC was lifted, Lawson expressed his displeasure, particularly with what he perceived as a slower pace from Perez. V-Carb race engineer Pierre Hamelin addressed Lawson's concerns by acknowledging the frustration of finishing in 9th place, close but not within scoring distance. Lawson responded emphatically by saying that he did not even have the words to articulate his feelings about the race and the situation at hand. Hamelin reassured him that they would review the events that occurred during the VSC restart, noticing that they lost ground compared to the drivers in front of them. Lawson continued to press for clarity by stating that he was right on Perez's tail, arguing that Perez had a 5-second advantage at one point. Hamelin agreed, confirming that he noted Perez had opened a slight gap in the corners during the race. When a VSC is in effect, it is crucial for drivers to maintain a specific target time, known as the delta time. By mentioning that Perez was going positive, Lawson implied that Perez was moving significantly slower than what was required, which raises questions about race standards. Although Lawson's comments did not lead to an official investigation by the stewards, they further intensified the already building tension between him and Perez, especially as both drivers are competing under the Red Bull banner in Formula One. Before coming into the Brazilian Grand Prix, Lawson had openly stated that he was not looking to make enemies in the sport, highlighting that his focus remains firmly on winning races rather than forming friendships with other drivers. At just 22 years old, he shared his perspective on racing, saying that while he does not intend to create any conflicts, his primary goal is to secure victories and improve his standing in Formula One. He emphasized the importance of the competition, particularly as his team fights hard for points in the Constructors' Championship and as he seeks to solidify his own future within the racing world. Lawson said that his dedication is directed toward achieving success rather than socializing, underscoring his serious approach to the competitive nature of Formula One racing and the significance of every race to his career. A hectic Saturday at Interlagos has come to a premature end after Brazilian GP qualifying has had to be postponed due to rain. Formula One boss Stefano Domenicali addressed broadcast media after the announcement of the postponement to share an update about the qualifying session and F1's plans for Sunday. Almost immediately after Saturday morning's sprint race came to a conclusion, storm clouds rolled in and began pelting the Interlagos circuit with rain. Qualifying for the main Grand Prix event was clearly under threat as water pooled on the track and conditions failed to improve. The session was delayed in 15-minute increments as the race director surveyed conditions. Finally, after 2 hours, the session was ultimately postponed as the conditions failed to improve and the sun began to set. In an official statement, the FIA said, "The qualifying for the São Paulo Grand Prix is postponed. The decision was taken due to the lack of visibility caused by the level of rain we have experienced in the past few hours. There is a lot of standing water on parts of the circuit which renders conditions unsafe. As much as we would all like to see competition on track, the safety of drivers, team members, volunteers, officials, and spectators is our main priority. A decision on a start time for qualifying tomorrow morning will be taken as soon as possible." Stefano Domenicali, the current CEO of Formula One, also spoke to broadcast media as the decision to postpone qualifying to Saturday came through. "First of all, let me once again reiterate the fact that these fans are incredible," Domenicali said on the broadcast. "We cannot control the weather, as you know, and it's a pity, but the conditions are not safe to drive. As simple as that. And there is a problem also of light that very soon will hit the track. Unfortunately, that's the situation we have to manage." When asked if the plan was to run qualifying in the morning, Domenicali confirmed that statement. "Yes, that's the plan now," he said. However, he also added, "The FIA is doing the final check on what could be the right timing to organize the quali and to follow up the plan to complete the day. Because as you know, it's a great event, and we need to make sure that we can maximize everything in all the conditions that can be acceptable." He also took a moment to acknowledge the unbelievable fans that remained at the track even as the skies opened up. "They are unique," Domenicali added, "and unfortunately, as I said, we just need to thank them. But they will understand that racing in this condition is impossible." That's it for this video. I'll see you around.